Welcome to MRS Bulletin's Materials News Podcast, providing breakthrough news and interviews with researchers on hot topics in materials research. My name is Laura Lay.
Perovskites are a hot topic as they could be used to produce efficient solar cells. Metal halide perovskites are the emerging forerunner as they can be made with low cost and low energy intensity, but challenges remain around their stability. There's a wide diversity of materials chemistry that could be probed to find more stable perovskites, and doing this using traditional laboratory techniques would be incredibly time-consuming. One research group has developed a way of automating this process that uses minimal chemical resources and produces tiny samples that save on analysis time and energy. RoboMapper uses precursor salts in various solutions to print an array of perovskites of different compositions. These printing robots fit on a benchtop, taking up a space that's about a metre squared. Hundreds, or potentially even thousands of samples can be printed in an array. Each sample can be as small as 50 micrometers in diameter and 600 nanometers thick, with an option to produce square patches and lines rather than spots. The small size is sufficient for the analytical instruments. Automated analysis stations can then perform microscopy, spectroscopy, diffraction, or electrical characterization using bespoke XY stages. Professor Aaron Mamasian from North Carolina State University explains their approach.
If we were to think of ourselves as designing the laboratory not from the perspective of people, but from the perspective of the data we're trying to generate about materials, how would we go about designing the experimental workflow? Because if we are going to automate, we no longer need to think about the sample manipulation by hand. And so we no longer have to think about the sample size. The other inspiration was all the advances in materials characterization. You can do things down to the nanoscale and then the microscale. So you could collect meaningful data on samples that are very small.
Duplicate arrays of samples can also be shipped to collaborators to perform detailed analysis. Collaborators at the National Synchrotron Light Source 2, part of Brookhaven National Laboratory, have a custom-built setup to perform XRD and probe the effects of temperature. The work has also led to a cloud-based data library with collaborators at Iowa State University and UNC Chapel Hill. The aim of finding efficient, stable perovskites and other semiconductors is to help build energy supplies that have a minimum contribution to climate change. This means that sustainability is an important feature of the research. The team worked with an expert in life cycle analysis to determine what factors of their research were least sustainable.
We did an in-depth analysis of the time, the operational steps, the energy required. We also worked with an environmental economist to do a life cycle assessment, cradle to grave, evaluated the entire environmental impact of research associated to generating data for perovskites, the structural data. And what we found is that, to our surprise, a lot of the energy generated, carbon footprint, environmental impact, was actually coming from the characterization. We thought that we needed to, all of the impact was going to come from reducing the amount of material we're wasting, the solvents, the single-use plastics. And it's true that it makes a difference, right? But we were surprised to see how significant it was also to reduce the bottlenecks associated to characterization.
Using smaller samples printed on an array increased instrument time, which reduced electricity consumption, which means that the automated research is more sustainable than doing all of the work by hand. Automation also means that compositions could be screened, allowing the researchers to focus on the most promising candidates.
We used a framework that's physics-based that essentially did not require us to actually make devices, did not require us to actually make long-term stability tests. So all we had to do was just print the materials on a chip and do a test that required an hour in order to predict whether the material was going to be stable and was going to result in good solar cells. Now you have a truly high throughput screening method that you could at least use to do fast failing. Fast failing means that you could at least fail 90 or 99% or 95% of the bad ones. And then you could focus on, 1% or 5% to do more extensive investigations on the ones that seem more promising.
Using their automated approach, quantitative structure-property relationships for a wide bandgap perovskite were found. In previous work, the team had looked at this type of perovskite for use in tandem solar cells, where silicon is still used, but the perovskite forms an extra layer.
Tandem solar cells, I think, are the next revolution in renewable energy. Think of it as taking existing solar technologies like silicon and adding an additional layer or subcell on them and enhancing their efficiency, reducing the cost in terms of dollars per watt, and accelerating the decarbonization of the grid. And so what our quantitative structure property relationships revealed is what is the right composition at which you have the perfect cubic perovskite that has the right band gap and leads to the minimum amount of light-induced halide segregation. And so it sort of was a demonstration of how you would go about doing a pre-screening for an alloy. You would take that, essentially do the further optimization. And so it was sort of a proof of concept. And we translated that to a device, and we showed that the concepts of this workflow were sound.
As materials science moves forward, an automated approach could make a big difference in screening materials, developing datasets, and in making lab practice more sustainable.
The Royal Society of Chemistry came up with a report on sustainable laboratory practices. And that was an inspiration to us. And that report showed that most scientists are interested in finding ways to make laboratory research more sustainable, but they don't necessarily know how. And hopefully this study shows that there are ways of not just incrementally improving sustainability, but there are ways that you could improve sustainability by orders of magnitude, or at least an order of magnitude, which we have shown. And that sustainability improvement comes with very, very significant changes in productivity and efficiency in research.
This work was published in a recent issue of Matter.
My name is Laura Lay from the Materials Research Society. For more news, log on to the MRS Bulletin website at mrsbulletin.org. Follow us on Twitter at mrsbulletin. Don't miss the next episode of MRS Bulletin Materials News. Subscribe now. Thank you for listening.